This is Dan Yeeman from Open City, Painted Black, and Bitter Branches, and you are listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we've got two excellent guests for you. First, Rachel Rubino. You know her from Bridge and Tunnel. You know her from Open City. You know her from On the Might of Princes. And we cover all of those things and more. She's got a really interesting story about a chance meeting with Dan Yeeman in Philadelphia that resulted in her joining Open City as their vocalist. She's doing vocals now for On the Might of Princes. And if you have the chance to see them, I really recommend that you go do it because I played a show with them back in August and it was really something to witness. Great stuff. Unbelievably great conversation with Rachel. Very nice, very uplifting. Did you know she's a semi-professional bike racer as well? I didn't know that. We talk about that too. And we also have our artist spotlight interview this month with Mikey Kent, the guitarist and vocalist of the band Private Hell. They just put out a new EP on Persistent Vision Records last year called Days of Wrath. They've got some new singles that just came out that are really good. We talk all about that. So make sure you stick around until the end of the show because it's a great one. But before we get to all of that, I need to ask you for Apple Podcast reviews. We are at 288. We just need 12 more. We are very close to closing in on 300, which we want to do before the end of the year. So if you have an iPhone, open up the podcast app, search The New Scene, scroll down a bit, hit that 5-star button, and submit. You can also write a review if you want, and if you do that, I'll read it at the end of the show. Also, follow me on social media at New Scene Pod. Follow both of our YouTube channels. We have a main channel with full shows and a clips channel with clips from select episodes. You can buy a New Scene shirt at our store at deathwishinc.com. Also, you can always email me at newscenepod@iodinerecordings.com. And speaking of Iodine Recordings, don't forget to support them. Here's some updates from the label. State Faults is doing a special run of their excellent 2019 LP called Clairvoyant. It's on red vinyl, and it's available to order right now. So get it before it's gone. Great band, great record. Go check it out. Speaking of great bands, Gatherers are doing a run of their Massillette 6 Sad Hearts 7-inch on silver vinyl on Iodine Recordings. This was originally released in 2021, and it's back on this special limited pressing, so go pick it up. Don't forget, we've also got Heartbreak's Got Backbeat by 6 Going on 7, available for pre-order. Street date on that is February 5th. It's back on vinyl for the first time in a long time, so you want to get it. Drought are playing Your Renaissance Fest in Los Angeles, California, which takes place May 24th and May 25th at Terragram Ballroom. So go check them out if you have the chance. And Dead Bars are playing November 27th at Sunset Tavern in Seattle, Washington. For more information, head to iodinerecordings.com. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter so that you get all of the updates first, and follow them on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. And don't forget to support our sponsor for the month of November, the legendary Equal Vision Records. You know them. Everybody's on Equal Vision. All the best bands: Hot Water Music, Bane, Code 7, Yellow Card, Armor for Sleep, Common Sage, Coheed and Cambria. I mean, everybody's been on this label. And here are some important updates. The new LP from Common Sage is called Closer To, and it's out right now. So make sure you go check it out. It's an excellent LP, one of the best of the year, I think. And they've also got 4 shows out west with Reggie and the Full Effect this December. The 20th anniversary tour of What to Do When You Are Dead by Armor for Sleep kicks off March 6th in Boston. And there's VIP tour packages where you can get exclusive merch, so go check it out and get your tickets now. Hot Water Music and Quicksand just released a split EP, and you need to hear it. It's really good. We've got a new song from each band. We've got the bands covering each other. Pick it up. Listen to it today. And Hot Water Music has tour dates in Australia this coming February, so make sure you go see them if you have the chance. Bane, the remixed, remastered 25th anniversary edition of It All Comes Down to This, is out November 1st. It's been completely remixed by Brian McTernan, so make sure you check it out. Hail the Sun have a tour kicking off in February and March with The Amity Affliction, Many Eyes, and Solence. And Shutdown have a new EP coming out January 17th, and it's called By Your Side. The first single and video for the song By Your Side are out right now. For more information, head to equalvision.com or check out their Instagram at equalvision. Okay, so check back in with me after the conversation with Rachel. We'll do a recap. We've also got the Artist Spotlight interview with Mikey Kent from Private Hell at the end of the show, but right now, we are going to speak to Rachel Rubino of Open City and On the Might of Princes. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Rachel Rubino. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, Rachel, it's great to have you here. You know, you've been up to a lot over the years. Zombie Dogs, Bridge and Tunnel, Open City, On the Might of Princes, you're doing vocals for now. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of exciting things going on, but Rachel, first I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. It's a beautiful fall day. I love this time of year. It's my favorite season. Yeah, how are you doing, Keith?
I'm doing okay. Look, everything's good. There's good stuff going on. Everything's fine, but there's like a lot of downtime lately. You know, the entire year I was working on music and recording and mixing and getting the band together for a couple shows, one of which we played together.
Yes, that was an awesome show.
Yeah, it really was. And the podcast was super busy all year. So right now it's just like a regular amount of work going on where I have downtime like all weekend or multiple days in a row, and downtime freaks me out. But besides that minor complaint, everything's great. This is also my favorite time of year.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, a lot of us creative types, I think struggle with downtime, myself included. So I definitely feel you on that. But, you know, I think we all need that kind of seasonal ebb and flow to, make sure that we can recharge. Whether we recharge in that time or not is debatable, but, I feel you.
Yeah, ultimately, it's a good thing. When I'm super busy, all I dream about is having a day to do nothing. And then when I have a day to do nothing, I freak out and I say, What am I going to do all day?
Yep, I relate 100%. I call that the stare at the wall day. I look so forward to having a day where I can do nothing but stare at a wall. And then as soon as that day comes, I also freak out and feel, pretty lost and weird and anxious immediately. But, we'll figure it out one day. We'll figure out how to actually rest and recover and recharge.
We have to.
Yeah.
You live in Philadelphia now, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
How long have you been there?
So I moved to Philly in 2013. So yeah, a little over 10 years now. So, yeah.
You were in Long Island before that?
Yeah. So I grew up out on Long Island. Great place to grow up. And so, yeah, I lived in New York for most of my life, growing up in Long Island. And as soon as I was kind of age to move out of the house, made my way to Brooklyn and lived there for about 9 years before moving to Philly.
Where did you live in Brooklyn?
I lived for about a year in Greenpoint, and then I lived in Bed-Stuy for the rest of my time.
So we did the opposite, right? I grew up outside of Philadelphia and then in Philadelphia and moved to New York City in 2012.
Nice. Oh, that's
and
funny.
And then you moved down there in 2013.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we didn't have much crossover together, but yeah. Philly's a great place to live. I mean, it's definitely it's different from New York, but it's not so different and it's not so far, and for me it's really nice to still be within driving distance of my family and friends and obviously people that I still play music with. So it's a great and affordable place to live that is not that far.
Right. Where in Philadelphia are you?
So I'm in Roxborough.
Ah.
Yeah. Like right by the West. So I live right, like I can just walk into the park from my house.
That's nice. Yeah. I can't visualize Roxborough, but I just know it's nice. I mean, with a name like Roxborough, it has to be.
It's a nice name. I mean, debatable, like up the hill is Roxborough, down the hill is Manayunk. But yeah, it's just right in that area. I love it up here. I just fell in love with it. I was so charmed by, proximity to the park here. For anybody that doesn't know, the Wissahickon Park it's beautiful and it's right in the city. But there's about 30 miles of shared hiking and biking trails. And it's just like a real magical respite from the city.
That sounds nice. What's your situation down there? Do you live with anyone, partner, dog, pet, anything?
Yes, I live with my partner, Kelly. And we, as of last week, have a new cat pet friend in our life named Maple. And we rescued her from a tree with a real neighborhood group effort, which involved calling a few people to bring over climbing gear and go up in a tree with like harness and ropes and get this cat down. And my partner and I, we had a cat before who was sadly hit by a car over the winter. So it was sad, and we were lonely without her for a bit. But the cat redistribution system smiled on us a week ago, and we rescued this kitten, and now she's making a really comfy home for herself here.
So, where in Long Island did you grow up?
I grew up in a town called East Islip, which is on the south shore of Long Island, and it's like smack in the middle, just like dead center. But it's technically in Suffolk County.
Okay. Yeah, my Long Island geography is non-existent, so
okay,
cool.
Cool.
I'm always curious.
Amazing to me.
How did you like it there?
I actually loved, I mean, I say this now, I think I romanticize everything after the fact, but I loved growing up there. I definitely liked it as a kid. The town I grew up in was just a real normal suburban town. But where we were located, it was like a mile from my house to go down to the marina, to like the bay, the water. And then like another mile from my house was like a 7-Eleven, So as a kid, I just like rode my bike to the water or rode my bike to the 7-Eleven. And there was also a really nice state park in my town. So there were like dirt jumps there. So I also rode bikes to these dirt jumps. And I feel like we had a really like fun place to grow up for kids. There were like things to do. And, that being said, it was really suburban. So it just had all the trappings of like suburban sprawl and stuff like that. So, I really liked it when I was young. And then as I became a teenager, like I got a little sour to the suburbs. I felt bored. And, like a lot of teenagers, I had a lot of the classic trappings of like, stuff at home didn't work out. And my parents were separating, when I was like going into high school. So it really fit that narrative of like, oh shit, my life's like falling apart and I live in the suburbs. And, that's, as a kid, it was easy to then start getting into trouble, at that age. So that was kind of, I feel like a very kind of typical Long Island experience.
Yeah. Did you get into trouble? Yeah. What kind of trouble?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I guess, I didn't know how to like handle, like my emotional state as a teenager, and especially with like stuff going on in my family, and having parents that also couldn't handle their emotional state really well. And I was an only child. So, I feel lucky I had like really good friends and great cousins, but it just sort of was the thing, like I just started drinking and doing drugs at like a really young age, unfortunately. I don't know, or fortunately, maybe it was like I got it out of my system early enough. I don't know. But yeah, that was kind of again, it's like very suburban experience. When you're like, life gets weird and you don't know what to do. And like, you're just hanging out with kids that you go to school with. And my parents sent me to Catholic school, which kind of put me in a weird position. In public school, I like played sports and I got fine grades. And I think if I stayed there, I might have been better off. But when I went to Catholic school, the school had no sports. And so I kind of just like had nothing to do all of a sudden, and then I had all this stuff going on in my home life and felt like, just gonna just get wasted to try to pass the time or make some of that like weird pain go away, kind of this classic suburban kid stuff. But that escalates and goes on for years. So at a certain point, obviously I had to really check myself. So
yeah, I have a lot of identification with your story because I did 12 years of Catholic school. Things were really rough at home when we were younger. And, a lot of vandalism and teen hijinks, paintballing and egging people. And then eventually alcohol and drugs. And then eventually alcohol and drugs went from like something I did once in a while to a crutch and, all that stuff. But how young were you when you started drinking and everything?
Yeah. And I'm sorry to hear that. But I can relate. I think a lot of us kind of can relate and have similar stories to experiences. But I was maybe like 12, I think, when I started drinking. Like at a party, like smoking cigarettes with my older cousin, and and started drinking, and I guess like I identified very quickly, like if I drank at all, I drank a lot, and so I at a young age I didn't understand what that meant. I just thought it was like, oh, it's fun to get drunk with your friends, and but that kind of behavior, that sort of like low impulse control, and I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea why I was doing it, but it progressed and got worse, and we smoked weed and did like other troublemaker kid stuff, like you said, vandalizing things and getting into fights and getting into trouble. And I do remember, like as time went on, I remember being like 15 or 16, and I went to this local deli that would sell beer to underage kids. And I think I went there like every day in the summer, it was just really frequently. And at one point, like the guy, Joe, who worked at the deli was like, "Are you always buying this beer for you?" And I was like, yes, like, and he was like, you come in a lot, like it was the thing where, I could tell he was like worried about me, and I felt ashamed, I guess, in that moment. But I guess those behaviors kind of continued, and I don't know, but I will say it was when I like started getting into music and getting into punk and hardcore that actually like helped turn me around a little bit for a while. Because it just like all of a sudden gave me something to do and something to be excited about and fixate on. And it gave me like a different activity other than just like the activity is to get drunk. It became like the activity is to go to a show, and like maybe we'll get drunk at a party or maybe not. So I was thankful to find music when I did.
Yeah, I think a lot. Like if I had gotten into a band or bands earlier and just did that all the time, maybe I would have been okay. Because I found certain psychoactive substances when I was 18. And when I did those, I was like, oh, like I feel comfortable for the first time in my life. Let me do this stuff every single day that I can. So,
yes.
And then by the time I got into bands, it was like I was already too far gone, So it was like, so I think it's like, maybe there's just a busy mind. It needs to be occupied by something productive.
Yeah, I really can relate to that. And I do think, for me, a lot of it was like, I benefited from like a healthy distraction, and something else I could like fixate on. And then, with music too, it's like man, music is like the fucking coolest. It's really the best, like it's everything. So, you can get lost in every part of it. Yeah, and I know, like, drugs kind of provide you this like, sort of automatic, escape, literally, like it changes your brain and your brain chemicals and your thoughts. And music
It's a
isn't
cheat
like,
code.
it is a cheat code. Yeah. And music's not quite that direct, but like you really can sort of, if you put on headphones and like put on a good record, you can easily get lost in it. It can absolutely like, change your dopamine, serotonin levels, like all of that. And further, like whatever kind of emotional experience you're walking through, I feel like my experience with drugs is like it would amplify things, and in a way that I couldn't control. So it did kind of freak me out at times. Sometimes I was like, oh, I'm high and I'm having a great time. And other times I was like, I'm high and like the thing that freaks me out is really loud, like, and so, I think, finding, I don't know, finding ways to like alter your mental and emotional state, um, but having more control over it or finding like more natural ways to do that. I guess I became interested in at a point. And I loved that like high feeling that I got from listening to music, and going to see bands play live and experiencing that like energy in the room with other people, and also like that experience of sharing, like singing along to a song with a couple hundred kids, like that's a really real experience. And so of course, like whatever shit you're going through, throughout the week or in your home life, or, that all kind of melts away for a period of time. And that's, I mean, in essence, that's what I was using drugs and alcohol for too. I was like, I just want to like numb myself for a few hours, or, give myself like the giggles for a few hours, I think you can get that through music too. It took me a while to really figure that out, I guess.
Exactly. That's something I figured out again big time earlier this year. Is that it's a longer build up. It's not like take a pill, feel like this 30 minutes later. It's like, oh, I invest 1 year in a band and awesome things happen, and then I feel awesome for like 3 or 4 months. That's, it's a longer investment, but that's the way you want to go. So in terms of your introduction to punk or hardcore or whatever, that whole scene of music, what was your thing? How did you find it? Was that your thing? Tell us about it.
Oh man. I guess, yeah. And forgive me too. Like I will try to not speak too far out of sequence, but, this is like,
yeah. And if you want to, it's fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's just my favorite topic, but I get like sometimes like too excited to talk about it. So, yeah, obviously feel free to edit anything. But yeah, how did I find it? I think I went to my first show. I was like 14 or 15 maybe, at Old First Church in Huntington Village. And it was like some kind of punk and ska show, with like 13 bands, lasts all day. And at that point, like I'd been into music, like, from a young age. I got into music really, really young with my like cousins and my dad and my, like I just was into music from as pretty much as early as I could remember, even in grade school, like we just listened to music at lunch period and like, got into all like the grunge bands and, stuff that like my friends' older siblings were into. So, from there, so I just always like identified with like being really into music. I started playing guitar a little bit too when I was younger. I played piano a little bit. So yeah, music was always something I was into. And then, yeah, I went to my first like punk and hardcore show. I was about 14, and I really, I really loved it. It was, it was like so special to see music like that live and up close. That was my first time seeing a band not, on a stage, at like, Jones Beach or something was, like concerts you'd go to when I was a kid. So yeah, this was like just a church VFW hall or whatever. And yeah, after that, I went to a couple more shows there and a bar called Ground Zero in Belmore. And just kind of whatever I heard of, like at a show, you get a flyer handed to you and you just go to the show the next weekend. You start to, chat with a couple of other like punk kids in your high school, in your grade, and like ask them what they're going to. And, that whole world just opened up to me. And it was cool. And yeah, I think at first I was into like punk and some ska stuff. And, from there, well, I remember like it's very impactful for me actually. Like the first time I saw On the Might of Princes was, I think I was like 15 or 16, and it was at that same church. And they were playing, again, like another show with like a bunch of bands. And I was there for like my friends' punk bands, and then all of a sudden there was this like different band, and they were a screamo band. I had never seen a screamo band before, and I just was so like blown away by them, and seeing Jason like, writhing on the floor and screaming into his guitar pickups. And, was like, what the fuck am I watching? This is crazy. This is so cool. And Nicole was the drummer at the time. And I thought it was, really cool that they had a drummer that wasn't a dude. And I talked to her after their set, and I thought it was so cool that I could just talk to the people in the bands. Like, that's crazy, So, yeah, I definitely, punished her at the merch table, talked to her for way too long, and bought all their merch, and was just like, cool, I'm going to come to every show. And I did from there on,
Pretty amazing that you ended up in that band, huh?
Yeah. It's a wild ride many, many years later. Yeah, but I mean, I would have never thought anything like that, but it was like the whole scene when I was growing up, it was really huge. I guess like I mean, and I kind of loved everything. Like I wasn't only into one style, I got really into hardcore bands. I think, kind of from listening to On the Might of Princes and this band Inside, which was another like emo band that was like, they were a little heavier. But like, I just loved everything they were writing. They had really melodic vocals, and that was really cool. And then this band Silent Majority, was another like Long Island hardcore band. But again, like the vocals were really melodic. The guitar parts were like super catchy, and the drum parts were super complicated. And I like loved that about them. And, and there was like a cool like art kind of, like indie rock scene with this guy, Mike, ran a record label called Rock Lock Records, and he put out a bunch of like indie rock bands. And then, and then there was also like a lot of vegan straight edge hardcore kids, like, and a really, kind of prominent hardcore scene. So basically like Long Island at this time just had everything in it, and every genre was really like covered and explored, and then like kind of melted together in a lot of ways. And a lot of the shows that we went to also had these really mixed bills, where you'd have like, a screamo band and like a tough guy hardcore kind of band, and then like a singer songwriter, like, female vocalist doing like an acoustic set, so it was just a crazy, I guess, like that was my entry into Long Island punk and hardcore. It was really varied in a cool way.
Around what year was it when you started going to shows?
I guess it would have to be 1998, 99, 2000, like
okay.
in that range.
Same here.
Cool. High five.
Yeah, it's like there was a lot of great stuff going on at the time. I always love to hear people like you who say that they just liked everything, because I would always get too locked into one thing, and then that would be it, and I wouldn't really explore anything outside of that. So when I came in, all the big bands were like Dillinger Escape Plan, Cave In, Coalesce, Converge,
yes.
Botch,
Hell
so
yeah.
that was pretty much just listening to that kind of stuff.
Nice.
And then a little more melodic metalcore later, and then I don't know, a lot of post-hardcore, and then a lot of post-rock. And so I would just like be like, this is my genre now, and that's it. And then I go back and look at all those old show flyers, and I'm like, why didn't I go to this? Why didn't I go to this? Why didn't I go to this? So
that's funny.
Hindsight is always 20/20 though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's part of me. I think I always have just like had an openness to different things, and like different sound just hits me differently, you know. And I'm grateful for that, I guess. But I mean, I definitely, yeah, that was also kind of, those bands you listed were like, you know, those early kind of metalcore bands or whatever you want to call them. Like they were huge. They were hugely influential on me. I was really into it. But I didn't like let that. I tried to not be pigeonholed into one genre. Yeah, I just thought there was just so much out there to explore and to love. But I definitely was into, you know, Coalesce and Dillinger and Cave In. I had such like a cool experience seeing Cave In for the first time, because I had been told that they were this like, you know, heavy metallic hardcore band, super nuts. They're going to be super nuts, you know? And so I was like, I think they were playing with Boy Sets Fire at a show at the Long Island Zoo on Long Island. So I went to that show, and Cave In started playing, and it was like right when they released Jupiter. And I was expecting like, you know, moshing. And I was like, wow, it's like fucking Led Zeppelin in here. And like they had all these crazy lights, and like they're playing their guitars with these like toy guns and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, like at first I was like, what the fuck is this? And then I was like, I'm really into this. Actually, this is really cool. So
They were evolving so quickly at that time that, you know, you'd see them one time and they'd come back and they'd be on to something else. Like,
yes.
They did Until Your Heart Stops, which blew my mind when I heard it, because I never heard that combination of metalcore and like space rock before. And I still remember getting chills the first time I heard like that chorus in Juggernaut. And when they came around again, Creative Eclipses was out. And I don't know, there's this, I forget the name of the first song on it, but it was like this spacey opening. And I remember people would still open a gigantic mosh pit to it, which was pretty cool.
That's amazing. I love that.
By the time they come around again, Jupiter is out. So they're already on to something else. So yeah, they were a foundational band for me.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you and I really came up in kind of a golden era, because there was just like, everyone was really kind of just pushing things creatively. I'm like excited to hear how people are going to talk about that era, or, you know, I think people are starting to now. But just, it was like so creative. And it was before the internet existed the way we know it today. So, you know, it was really just these people like influencing each other locally, and kind of pushing the genre. And I just think that's really fucking cool.
So when did you start playing?
I guess I you know, again, I like played instruments as a kid, like 12, 13. You know, and I really like loved playing guitar. And I think I decided, you know, like 15 or so, I was like, I'm going to play in a band. That's what I want to do with myself, you know? So 16, maybe 17, I like started my first band. And yeah, it was cool. Some kids in my high school.
What was your first band?
It was it's called Ankara. No one ever heard of it, I guarantee. Which is good. And then the second band I played in, we like did more. It was like more of like my first real band that played shows. That band was called Regarding I, and we played. It was very much like a kind of screamo, you know, hardcore, melodic, you know, mix of stuff. But we put a record out with a label called Monday Savior Records, which was actually Chris from Sky Came Falling. That was the label that he ran. So that was cool. Like, you know, it was our first opportunity to like, you know, really do a thing and put a record out. And we played a bunch of shows, and we played with Atmop, with On the Might of Princes, and they took us on our first ever tour when I was 19. So that was kind of like where I would say it all began, you know?
Wow. Yeah, I was hanging out with Justin the other week, and he referred to On the Might of Princes as Atmop. He's like, I was like, what bands do you play in? He was like, Atmop. And I was like, what? He's like, On the Might of Princes. And I was like, oh, right, Atmop. So I understand that abbreviated version now.
Cool. Yeah. For anyone that doesn't, that's what it is. It's a long name. It's a mouthful, you know? But
yeah, I like Atmop. That's good.
Yeah.
So wait, so you're 19 and Atmop takes you out on your first tour.
Yes.
That's cool. So here's a question for you. At that time, and forgive me if you identify differently now, but that at that time as a woman coming up in this scene, was it difficult? Because, you know, it's a lot of guys. There was a lot of machismo when I was coming up, a lot of fights, and there wasn't a lot of women in bands. There was only like 2 or 3 bands I could think of that had women in them. And, you know, attitudes were just a lot different back then. How was it for you at that time?
Yeah, it was like, you know, you hit the nail on the head, but yeah, it was super different. I felt that way like most of my, you know, musical touring career life. But, you know, I think on one hand we were really lucky. Again, like Long Island is this insanely special place where like we had so many local bands. So I actually could, you know, definitely count on 2 hands the amount of you know, women and just not dudes that I knew playing music, which was super cool. And it actually surprised me when I would go on tour and we would play shows with only bands with men, like every day, you know. And I was like, really, there's like no women in the scene here. Like, what's going on? But yeah, I mean, it was like it also, you know, at that time too. Yeah, people's attitudes were different, and I will say it was not easy for me on a personal level. Just like, yeah, having to navigate. It's just it's a different experience. It's a different world, you know? And, I mean, at first it wasn't always, it was like pretty negative. And even like within my own band, at that age and at that time, you know, I would like hope that people would grow, but people didn't act like appropriately to me, even within those confines. So it's, you know, it's just to say that like it's to understand like the lived experience of women is it's tough. You're kind of always put into a box. You're always seen as lesser than. You know, people make a big deal out of it also instead of just seeing you as a person, you know, and that has kind of been my experience my whole life. Because I fortunately or unfortunately I like to do things that like traditionally aren't necessarily, you know, feminine in nature or you know, I think like even when I was a kid, my mom was always very distressed that I wanted to do like boy stuff, like ride bikes and skateboard and play electric guitar loud, you know? So, you know, on one hand, I had like not very good support, you know, from like family and friends. And then, you know, even from within the scene, it was like people support you until like, you know, some guys make a fucked up joke and then you're like, cool. If you laugh at that, that's like really offensive to me, you know? So it was tough. It was definitely tough when I was, you know, 18, 19, 20. I do think I grew into a more confident version of myself over time and spoke out against, you know, that kind of behavior. And I also evolved into, you know, I mean, I also started playing music with different people in different bands and, you know, people that sort of had my back more. And I think that was like part of, you know, just there was evolution over time of people like understanding, you know, like it's, you know, there's no like reason to act like a dick. This is ridiculous. But it's truly,
Exactly.
you know, I guess, sorry. And I feel like I'm just babbling, but, a lot of like, you know, experiences on tour would be even just like friends coming up to me and being like, oh, you like play guitar awesome for a girl, for a woman, you know, like you rip at guitar, you know, and like, I've never seen a woman play guitar like that, you know, and like, I don't know, man, for years, I'd just be like, well, I guess like that's cool or that sucks. Like, or, you know, like I just am a human. Like I have hands and a brain. That's what you need to play guitar. So I don't know, man. It was definitely weird. And it definitely felt like tough to go those long stretches of time with like only in communities full of men. So
Yeah, remember how they would be like, "Oh, that's a girl band, or that's a girl guitar player, or that's a girl singer, or this band has a girl singer." You
Yeah,
know, it would
female
be like that.
fronted was female fronted was the like, I don't know. I feel like I saw that on every flyer, or every time a female fronted band would come to town, they'd be like, "Oh, you should play with this band." Like, yes, that's cool for sure. Yeah, actually, let's do whatever we can to show people that, like, your gender, like, has no fucking nothing to do with playing music. Other than to just be celebrated for being, like, having more diversity.
So let's say post high school, right? You want to play in bands. This is what you want to do. What is your life like at that time? Is it still messy? You said like being in bands kind of helped you out a bit. Like, did you have any kind of long-term goal of anything you wanted to do? Like, tell us what your life was like.
Yeah. So yeah, graduating high school. Yeah, high school was still a little bit messy. But I had, like, settled into playing in a band. That was definitely, like, a big part of my identity. Um, Unfortunately, my mom was sick. So she was diagnosed with cancer. First, she was diagnosed when I was 3 years old. And so she had, like, a very aggressive breast cancer when I was a baby, and treated that, went into remission, and was good for like 15 years. But then in my, like, senior year of high school, she was re-diagnosed with, like, metastatic cancer. So it's kind of like breast cancer that comes back in other parts of your body. And it's pretty aggressive. So yeah, that was very tough to kind of face and to deal with. And I certainly, it affected, like, the decisions I made. I was kind of hoping to go to college for art, because I also painted and, draw and do that kind of, like, fine art stuff I was really into. So I wound up actually staying local, going to a college on Long Island, just so that I could kind of, like, live at home with my mom and take care of her, because it was, again, like, I was the only child, so it's just her and I at that point. Um, so yeah, I was from, like, a Long Island, like, Italian Catholic family that was like, you take care of your mother, you go to college, like, you gotta do all these steps, like. So I wanted to, like, respect my family's wishes with that. But I really wasn't very focused on school, and I knew, like, I at the time, we didn't, like, get diagnoses for mental health stuff, but obviously I knew that I struggled to pay attention. I knew that I felt, emotions, very much on, like, both ends of the spectrum of very good emotion and very bad emotion. So I think I was, like, trying to understand how that affected me, and yeah, I really was like, all right, I'm just gonna finish school, hang out with my mom, and, like, I want to play shows, and eventually I want to go on tour. Like, that's my life's goal, was to go on tour. And I think through knowing the guys in Op 2, they they took us on that first tour, and that was really special and really fun. It was, like, between it was during my summer break in college. So of course, like, I went on that tour. It was absolutely horrible. Like, I think a 2-week DIY tour that wound up being, like, 10 days. I think we crashed a van. We had to go home early, I think, because the van was dead. And, like, we stayed in hotels and played house shows, and, like, just had really, classic DIY punk tour experiences. So I loved it, and I knew I wanted to do more of that. So yeah, I got through college barely. And I made art, which was cool. I fucking loved doing that. It was really fun. And it was, like, a very valuable experience. But as soon as I was done, I just was like, all right, cool. I'll figure out what to do for work, or I'll just go on tour. And after, not long after I graduated college, actually, my mom's condition worsened pretty rapidly, and she passed away when I was 22 in December. So it was like I had graduated college the summer before, and I kind of just hung with her until then. And yeah, then tried to navigate, you know, doing all of that, after losing a family member, which was super tough to handle at 22.
Yeah. What did you do after that? Because it was just you and her, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was just her and I. So, and like, we lived together in a house on Long Island. And so that was, left to me. And I was 22 and I was like, all right, well, I have to like sell my mom's house now. And that was like just a thing I felt so unequipped to do. But of course, like, you know, having a lot of medical bills, and she couldn't work for a long time, so it was like we like lived off of the many mortgages that were taken out on that house. So yeah,
Yeah.
it just was, I guess, like, sorry to be very personal, but it's like it was just I would just yeah, at 22 was like, what the fuck. I don't know any of this. I didn't even, like, I could pay my car insurance payment and like my cell phone bill, and that was it at the time. So it was like a lot of learning hard things fast. And I feel lucky I did have some support around me, some family, on my mom's side was there to help me out. And my friends were just like so loving, and they were all, by my side through a lot of it. But it did mean I like spent almost a year like living alone in the house I grew up in after my mom had passed. So it just was like a very I don't know. It was like a unhealthy time, mentally and emotionally. Just like was very hard to get through. So yeah, I think
can imagine.
Yeah.
Because when I was 22, well, I was already a mess, but my only goals were to like get drunk and get high,
Yeah.
basically, and like hope to get in a band. So if I was dealing with everything you were dealing with on top of that and living alone in a house, well, it would have been bad.
Yeah. Thanks, Keith. It was like,
Yeah.
It was a really fucking weird time. Yeah, again, I don't know. A lot of it's like a little hazy, but I had help from like, a couple family members and my friends like came over and just like fucking, slept over. Like we would watch movies and just to keep me company, because it was tough. I did eventually go live with my aunt and my cousins, because I actually couldn't like handle being there alone after like 8 months or so. And I was really grateful for them for that. And once I kind of had my feet underneath me, then I moved to Brooklyn and kind of like restarted my life from there. But it was cool and it was terrible, because it was like I had this huge fucking void. And losing my mom, who I was close with, was like very tough. But then also I was like a young person experiencing new levels of freedom I had never known, which like also included being able to figure out who I was without some of the like guilt attached to that process. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, it was an exciting time to be, like a young person living in the city. But I also felt like I just had like a big weight on my heart a lot of the time. And yeah, I struggled at that point with substances. Like when my mom got sick, I had actually like really cooled it. I kind of really was like, all right, I'm going to clean myself up, because I gotta like be available for her. If she's like not okay at some point, I got to be able to like drive home wherever I am. So that was like a sobering time in my life. And then I think after she passed, I did like kind of go back into that world a bit. I kind of really on and off with like drugs and alcohol, and again, a lot of it was around like depression. So yeah, being able to look at it now, it's like, well, if I was really depressed, I would drink a lot and like have and then I would feel a lot of shame. And then I'd be like, oh, get your shit together, Rachel, and I would clean it up for like 6 months. And I would do that like on and off, until I eventually got sober at 27.
So are you fully sober now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have you been since you're 27?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. I had to do the same. I don't like to say the year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to say the exact year on the show for reasons, but I'll tell you afterwards. But it's been a long time now, and I had to give up everything or I was going to die. That's the way it was going for me.
Damn. Well,
yeah.
Solidarity with you in that, because, I think same, that was the path. But I'm sorry you had that experience. And, again, I think a lot of us, they just like, it comes to a point where you just have to make that call, I'm glad I made it when I did. I'm very happy with that decision, but it's not been an easy one. I think a lot of people forget that it's like, people think, oh, you're like straight edge because you love straight edge, and I was like, that's never been it for me. I do not, I do not subscribe, just because, Earth Crisis said or whatever. Like, I just, but I think it becomes more of like, what kind of quality of life can I have if I continue on this path? So
I like to say I'm straight edge by necessity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like
it's
that.
It's not for fun. It's out of sheer necessity. I would like to continue living longer, so I will make this choice each day.
Yeah, man. I support you. I'm here with you for sure. And I think it's fucking cool that you made that choice for yourself.
Same for you.
Thanks.
So we know you ended up in Bridge and Tunnel. Did that get started when you were down in Brooklyn?
Yeah. Actually, I think we started playing when I still lived on Long Island, like in my mom's house, Yeah. I think that band did start around that time. And yeah, at that time, all of us lived on Long Island, probably still with our parents. And or no, actually Jeff lived in Queens for sure. And he was he might have been a year or two older than me. So yeah, he lived in Queens, in Astoria. But yeah, we had band practice at Tia, our bass player's family's house, which was really cool. It was like a cool castle looking house in Huntington. And her mom had like a horse. So we would like, get together on like a Saturday and just like hang out with a horse and then write a bunch of weird songs. It was very cool. It was a really fun band to play in.
How out there did Bridge and Tunnel get? Did you guys tour a lot? Like, what was going on?
Yeah, I think I did the most touring with Bridge and Tunnel of any other project that I've played in. So yeah, Bridge and Tunnel toured a lot. Actually, it was really cool. It was great. I have really fond memories of a lot of it. Some not so fond, but of course that comes along with the kind of arc of touring. But we did a bunch of.
What is not so fond, if I may ask?
Everything from like just having some DIY tours, maybe like go kind of sideways and having shows that were not great in like more remote parts of the country. They wind up being fun stories later, but in the moment they're tough. And I think too, like it's really one of the only negative things I can recall with Bridge and Tunnel is like there were times where we all struggled with substance use. So I think some of the tougher times were, surrounding some of our members, like, struggles with substances, and like overuse of substances, and, that affecting how the band could relate to each other and like stuff like that. But overall, we were all really good friends, and we did love each other and like loved playing music together. And we wrote some kooky songs, and we did get to tour Europe a bunch, which was super cool. And I still to this day like talk to a lot of those folks that we met on those tours, and I feel so grateful for that. That was actually going back to what we were saying earlier, is like when I graduated college and I went on my first tour, and I was like, my life's goal is to tour Europe. That was it. That was just it. So I got to do that with Bridge and Tunnel. I felt like that was so special. And we got to go a couple times. This guy, Jan from Yo-Yo Records, he booked us tours over there, and they were really, really fun. They were very like DIY tours. Jan is vegan straight edge, so a lot of the tours went through friends of his who would like cook us these beautiful vegan meals, and it was really nice. Like I can't imagine a nicer way to have toured Europe. Jan also, he did something with like a school program, where he kind of did like something with schools where he would give like these educational tours, for like remembrance sites and other like historical things. So that was kind of also built into our touring with a punk band, which I thought was really the coolest thing, was to actually connect with the places we were going and the history in these places. And so, yeah, we did a lot of like visiting museums and remembrance sites and learning about the histories of the places we were going through. And we also like took hikes up mountains in Italy. Like we did some cool shit. So I feel really grateful that like our touring experience was more than just showing up, playing a show at a bar and going to sleep. And certainly we did lots of tours that were like that, but I have so many fond memories of the tours we did with Jan that were, different than that.
That's so cool, because 99% of the time I just show up to a bar and play and then go to sleep. So the idea of hiking mountains in Italy and seeing historical stuff and remembrance sites, that's so cool.
Yeah. I really like, gosh, like I wish I had, more photos than I do. And I still like, I just, hold these memories so dear. And I'm so grateful that we got to have those experiences. It was cool. And I think, again, like as my sort of experience evolved, I wanted to focus, I guess, being in a punk band too at that time, like there is just still so much focus on drinking and getting drunk, right? Like we, Bridge and Tunnel put records out on No Idea, which is a great record label from Gainesville, Florida. And they book the fest every year. That's like a fest that happens down there in Gainesville. And it's just sort of known for being like a PBR drinking crowd. Like it's very much, it's known for that, and I think too, like as I evolved as a person and wanted to distance myself from that, it was cool that we were able to like continue doing our band and sort of, grow and not just be kind of pigeonholed into that sort of behavior and that sort of scene, even though, that is definitely where we started out. So again, I feel grateful for all the people all the friends I made through that were like, we see the value in other things, in not just, getting drunk together, which there's value in that too. Don't get me wrong. Like people share camaraderie in all kinds of ways. And, but yeah, I liked that, touring kind of really just gave me these like very impactful life experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there was a lot of good times of getting high and drunk, and, a lot of connections made, a lot of late nights, and even some creative output. But there was the bad side too, right? Like my regret is that it overtook my life, and just I could have been focused solely on creative stuff and like building this lifetime of achievements, but I had to get to it later. Well, let me think about this. All right. I got more focused later. Let's say that.
Yeah.
I forget where I'm going with this, but let's just say good times, bad times. So what happened to Bridge and Tunnel? You went until about 2013?
Yeah. Timeline's a little hazy, but yeah, I mean, we must have stopped a little bit before I had moved to Philly. But Bridge and Tunnel sort of like kind of naturally ran its course a little bit. We, again, like we were creating music that we really loved and we were really proud of. And we were sort of we were like at that point where, we had done a ton of touring and it was really exhausting. We all kind of had a lot of like credit card debt at that point, from, touring and like buying merch and buying records and fixing vans and stuff. So, I think we all looked at each other and we're sort of like, all right, let's like be adults here and just not, ruin our lives. And we sort of scaled back touring so that we could work some whatever shitty day job. And yeah, I think it kind of was more like, if we're not really getting like asked to go on great tours and we're not able to make this like actually financially, sustainable, then maybe we need to figure some other stuff out and just spend our time doing other things. And again, for a lot of us, that looked like, okay, well, we're just gonna like stay home for a year and just like work and catch up on the debt that we have. And yeah, other people have other interests, start playing in other bands. I always had like a couple of bands going at once because I like creatively never feel satisfied with like just one thing. So I think we all just like took some time to do other stuff, and some people moved away, and the band kind of just like stopped being active. I don't recall us ever like hard breaking up, but we just sort of like, so we sort of like let the light go out, and that was that.
So you ended up in Philadelphia, where, as legend has it, you ran into Dan Yemin at Grindcore House, and he
Yes.
says, "Hey, I've been meaning to get in touch with you. We want you to sing for a band." Now, is that true?
Yeah, that's a true story, which I feel like is a special punk lore, It's-
Yeah, like I want Dan Yemin to be looking for me at a
Yeah.
coffee house. That's what I want.
Yeah, man. I gotta say, I was like floored. I was like, are you kidding? Like, you
Tell us about that meeting. Like, do you see him first? Does he see you? Tell us about how it went down.
I don't remember if I honestly, I think we just like, I don't know if I saw him like sitting outside or something, drinking a coffee, but we knew each other. Obviously, like, Bridge and Tunnel had played shows with Painted Black, and we loosely knew each other and like hung out in circles together. So I was very surprised. I was like the last thing I would have expected Dan to say to me, but I think so. It was like funny, but he was like, yeah, I think he referenced like Bridge and Tunnel had done a cover set at a fest one year. I broke my hand and I couldn't play guitar, which was a huge bummer. And I so like instead of canceling our set, we just learned a bunch of cover songs, and I just sang, and we did like a nice medley of Minor Threat songs and Bikini Kill songs and Modern Life is War and Dead Kennedys and like a lot of real mixed bag of a cover set. But it was very fun, and I think Dan maybe like saw that show and was like, "You did a great job with that. Like that was really sick. Do you ever want to like maybe sing in a hardcore band?" Like, yeah, me and Andy Nelson and Chris Wilson have been playing, and we have these songs. Like, if you'd ever be interested in just singing in a band, I could send you these songs. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, who doesn't dream of like just being a front person in a hardcore band?
Right?
Yeah, it's like, but obviously, but that's like, it's funny to me still because I always identify as a guitar player. That's always been more who how I identify myself as a musician. So, but of course, like Dan Yeaman asks you to play in a hardcore band, you say yes. You're, it's a really cool idea. And he sent me the songs, and as soon as I heard them, I was like, these are very cool, very sick. Definitely, it was like different than what I don't know. I don't want to say I was expecting anything. It just was like, it was really different than anything I maybe had heard them do before. So I was very excited about it. And yeah, they had a practice space. So it would like all happen real quick. We just kind of started it up, and we all, I think, very quickly felt good about it and felt like it was a good fit. So that's how that started.
I love that. Yeah, and you just reminded me, it's Dan Yeaman, not Yemen. I found that out when I had him on the show. Sorry, Dan, I'm going to get it straight one of these days. So at that first practice, what happens? Is everyone there? You just show up and try some stuff out? How does it go?
Yeah, everyone's there. We all pronounced Dan's last name wrong, and we no, just kidding. No, yeah, everyone shows up. They had sent me some songs, so I got to work like independently on some ideas, and so I think I came to practice with like a song or two's worth of ideas, and yeah, just kind of was like, let's go. And I think I guess one feeling that I have had about Open City since the start of it is that like everyone there is a very like good and seasoned musician, And so,
Oh yeah.
that's like really good company to be in. So I kind of felt too like, okay, I'll show up, I'll have ideas, and we'll just go from there. Like they'll like it or they won't, and I like it, So I kind of felt like, yeah, I mean, I like the ideas I'm bringing here. I think it's cool. I think like we could do a cool thing together, and so yeah, it just kind of clicked. It really was like not. I didn't feel that nervous or anything. It just kind of was like, yeah, cool. Like you like the thing I add to this? Great. Like let's keep going with it. And they had a full LP's worth of songs written and recorded. So I very much was like, okay, I have a lot of work to do here. So yeah, over time, it did take a little while to write and record that LP of vocals, just because also I had never written like a LP's worth of vocals at once. With Bridge and Tunnel, I wrote like a couple songs, but I would say Jeff was our primary singer in that band, and then also Tia, who played bass, and Al, who played bass, also sang. So Bridge and Tunnel was much more like everybody contributes. So this was the first time I had ever like been the sole singer and vocal writer. So it was funny. I felt like writing a record. I feel like I'm writing a dissertation. This is like a lot of words to write, but it was super cool, and I loved it. And it was just like a very different exercise for me mentally and emotionally to try and write like that. So yeah, the first LP we recorded with Will Yip. Shout out to Will. He's the fucking king. Like recording with him was incredible. I loved it. And that was just like a really cool experience to step into shortly after joining this band. But they had already tracked the instruments with Will. So it was kind of like, cool. Yeah, we like your vocals. And whenever you're ready, you could we'll book time at the studio in Conshohocken. It was cool. It was nuts. And it was cool. Very valuable experience.
Yeah, pretty amazing, right? Chance meeting at a coffee shop, and now you're recording this amazing record with these amazing musicians.
Yeah, man. Very. I mean, I feel lucky every day that happened. Like, how'd that happen? It's all Also, like growing up when I was young on Long Island, like everybody loved Dan and Andy's bands and Chris too. So it was like, it just felt like, why me? Like, this is so weird. This is cool. But also again, in that way where it was like, I didn't really feel like hero worship with them, which felt like good. I just felt like, man, these are like really seasoned players, and they're really good at what they do. And they have really great ideas, and they're able to like articulate them well, both like verbally and physically in the outplaying of the music. So it was it just felt like a very cool experience in like a funny like pro way where I kind of just walked in and was like, this is good. Like doesn't need much. It's just good already,
Yeah, I love this band. I love that debut record. It's I've read I think Dan and Andy talk about the long list of influences that influenced the band and that first record, and those are influences I pull from directly and indirectly too. It's just I just love the sound, and it reminds me of my own band, except tuned lower and heavier and noisier. So it's like in the same stratosphere, let's say, but very strong debut. And we went on to record Hands in the Honey Jar, and you worked collaboratively with everyone for the first time on this follow-up LP, yes?
Yes. Yeah. And thanks for saying you like it. That means a lot to me, honestly. I wasn't sure like how it would be received, and I also
it's so
felt
good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I felt like for myself too, it was almost like I was just really finding a different voice to use and like play around with. It just felt very like cool and new and free for me. So yeah, writing for Hands in the Honey Jar, which is the second LP, that process was much more collaborative with all of us. And even though like a lot of the music stuff. Like Dan or Andy might have riffs that they brought to practice, or they might play with Chris, like without me for a day. And then I'll come in the next time and kind of hear it and, give my 2 cents on, something I think might be good for a part or a transition. And that felt really fun because I love so much like the songwriting part, crafting the parts and how to fit them together, and like not playing an instrument. I really was like kind of missing that, so it felt cool to have a little bit of a voice in some of that part of the songwriting. And then the vocals again, sometimes they would come quickly to me, and then sometimes I would kind of sit on certain songs for longer. And sometimes like some things just really, they like click right away. Other things wouldn't. So yeah, we got down to the point where like all of the music for the LP was ready to go. And they went in to record with Arthur Rizek, who is also a king, also a fucking phenomenal person to work with. I have to say, the 2 people we've recorded with Open City, like it blew my mind how easy it was to work with these people, and like just what an incredible job I think they did for us and for the sound of our LPs. So I'm just shouting them out. I'm so grateful for them. They're fucking incredible. And very patient. And I will say, with Hands in the Honey Jar, that LP was very, very tough to record. Not least of which because they tracked all the instruments. Dan and Andy and Chris went in and tracked instruments very quickly. And like literally weeks later was when the pandemic lockdown kind of began. So that was really unfortunate timing. And, so we spent, of course, like, maybe at least like 6 months or more, just not even knowing like when we would get to do things in person. So, and I remember, there was a couple times where we, once we could get vaccinated and things started to look better, we would schedule a date to record. And I remember like one time Arthur himself got COVID, and another time like one of us had a COVID scare, and like it kept like happening where it was like, oh fuck, like this is like 6 months later, and one day we pick, we're like, oh, someone's like sick or something happens. So recording that LP did become a very drawn out process. Also, it's not just because of COVID. Like I personally really struggled to finish writing lyrics for some of the songs. Again, some of the songs I just had very quickly. I felt really inspired, and it just clicked. It made sense. And some of the other tracks I just was struggling with, and without like being in the room and feeling the energy from my bandmates, I just really was like, damn, it is hard to write like lyrics to a hardcore song alone in my bedroom. Like, waiting for like maybe my partner to go out for a few hours, like it's a really like vulnerable thing to do. It's, I'm sure you understand, I live in a row home. So like the walls are connected, so I'm not going to be like shouting in my guest room, which is like the room I have a computer in, and, yeah. And again, like we weren't able to be in person practicing very frequently. So yeah, all of it just felt really tough. And that LP took a long time to write. And so again, I feel like finishing it was a small miracle. But I'm really, really proud of it. I really love it. So I'm happy that we all like pushed on and saw it through. And I'm thankful to them all for their patience and for like everyone just being down to do it,
Yeah, it was pretty amazing how it came all together. I read that Andy had to go in like before he played a show somewhere and do half of the bass lines, and then like the other half later that day or something crazy like that. But yeah, we got it done, and the results are amazing.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks. Yeah, I'm super like I love it. I'm super proud of it. I'm super like impressed with my bandmates, always, but like yeah, I love a weird story like that where Andy was playing a show like down the block from Arthur's studio and was like, "Yeah, I'll come in, do a couple tracks, we'll play the show and then I'll come back after I'm done playing a show and finish it up." Like no big deal. Just knocked it out. Yeah.
And you teamed up with Dan for vocals on Blitz Kids Stay Sick.
Yeah. Yeah. So that and admittedly that was one of the tracks I was really struggling with where I felt like I couldn't write the right parts for it, I was like, this song's obviously a banger. It hits. Like it's heavy, it hits. But I just don't feel like I have it, And I sort of like I felt a little timid. Like I asked him, would you be like at all willing to like write lyrics and vocals for this song and we could like sing them together or whatever, or like it'd be sick if you just wanted to sing a song, and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, I would love to do that. Thank you for asking." Like he was so sweet about it. And within like a day he sends me lyrics in a text message, was like, "What do you think of these?" And I was like, "This is fucking perfect. It's sick." And like he just sent me lyrics. It wasn't like I hadn't heard how he was gonna put them in the song. And he and I went to Arthur's studio together, week or two, whatever later. And so the first time I heard his idea was like him tracking it. And I swear to you, I think we kept the first fucking take. Like it was unreal. I was like, "Dan, you're a machine. How do you do that?" Like no practice, nothing. He just walked in and was like, "Here's my idea." Blah. And it was perfect. And yeah, we like kind of played with it a little bit, went back and forth on lines in the song. It was like really fun for me. I actually like he had tracked it through first, like the whole thing, and then we decided, oh, it'd be cool to trade off. And so I like made my vocal delivery sound a lot like his was, and for me that was just so fun because I was like mimicking, like one of my good friends, vocal heroes. Like I'm kind of like just like copying his voice, and it's just so opposite of how I tend to phrase things. So I just like loved that. It felt like anytime that I've been asked to like learn someone else's guitar parts, and it feels really unnatural for your hand to like play chords the way someone else does, this like felt like the vocal equivalent, but in a very cool way. So yeah, I'm super glad that we did that track the way we did. I love how it came out.
Oh yeah, it's a great one. And we know that you are now fronting On the Might of Princes, the legendary Otmop. Now, how did this come about? Did Chris get in touch with you? How do you get word? How does it all happen?
Yeah. So this is obviously like a very crazy, very also just very important thing for me. But yeah, Chris and I have stayed in touch over the years. He and I truly were like best friends, like inseparable when we were like 19, 20 years old. I think I hung out with Chris like every day, like just, so he is just a forever, a brother to me. And so it's never too long before we talk, right? We always chat on the internet. I see what he's up to. I'm always like, hell yeah, supporting, just seeing all the stuff he gets up to. But yeah, I think he just texted me one day and was just like, "Hey, like I want to call you about something. It's really important. Like, tell me when you have time to talk on the phone for like an hour." So, but in the Chris way where he's like, "But actually the sooner the better and immediately if possible. And, I need a decision. I need to make a decision by like, 2 PM. So can you talk right now?" So, which is perfect. So of course I'm sure I dropped whatever I was doing to talk to Chris. I fucking love him. But he just basically was like, here's the idea. There's the 20-year anniversary for Sirens, and our friend Mike Bruno, who runs a label, Dead Broke Records, was like, "Hey, I want to put Sirens out on vinyl." And I didn't realize at the time, but like they had never printed it on vinyl. And Chris was kind of like, "I think, it'd be really cool to do like a show to honor, the fact that like Mike, we call him Mike Dumps because he was in a band called Down in the Dumps, but he's like to honor that Dumps wants to put this out, like, and we thought like maybe it'd be fun to have like some friends like sing with us, and like he's like, me and Tommy talked about it, and like we talked about like some other guys, but like didn't feel right, and then we talked about like asking you, and like it felt right. So, would you like at all be interested in singing for these, special shows? And of course, like fucking cried and was like, yeah, like that's the hugest honor I could imagine. Thank you for thinking of me and like, yeah, like wanting me to be a part of that. It's like, I'm sure, I don't know if, maybe you've talked to me about this before or somebody, but it's, my story with that band is truly that like I saw them when I was, 15 or 16 or whatever. And I really did go to every show. Like they were one of my favorite bands. And um, as a person who like music is my life, right? It became my entire world. So if I say a band's my favorite band, like it's, I mean it. I was obsessed. I just like couldn't get enough. They, hugely influenced the way I played guitar, like Tommy and, and Jason and Lou, like the way that those guitar players all wrote together, and then Chris's drums, like everything about that band was super influential. So, it's like, of course, I was always at every show up front singing and, hanging out after the shows with them. So it just felt like, just a continuation of like these really special memories that I feel like I had with them and shared. Jason's singing obviously really influenced, my ideas for singing and vocals and bands and stuff. So it felt, yeah, it's like a huge honor and really special. I can't find enough words to like say that, a million different ways, but it just felt really so sweet to be asked to carry that with them.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me with that band too, because I discovered them later. I think after Jason was already gone, and I really liked the band. And as I got to know Chris, I heard the band even more, and then it was just solidified with just truly how great it was when we played that show together back in August, and I saw you, and you and Justin were like pulling people up on stage and everyone was singing along. It was really just something special. It was like a really awesome thing to witness.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Thank you. I will say like those shows really, they all felt so special. And I don't even know. I feel like everything I'm telling you tonight, like I want to say to you, like, and that was the best night of my life. And then that was the best, and I really kind of fucking feel that way. And I feel so lucky to have these memories where I can say to you, like, and Keith, that was the best night of my life. But it truly does feel like it keeps happening. And that's a really cool, I guess, way to evolve through life. But it really, I mean, the reunion shows that we played initially, like the show we played with you was also a special show with This Day Forward. And I loved it. I love those guys. Like we've been friends with all of them for ages. And so it also felt really special to like share, the OpMop like sets with them and with you all. And again, in New York, where it's like a home crowd for us. But really like the most special shows, we did the 2 Brooklyn shows and one on Long Island. And that like Long Island VFW hall show really just felt like the most, and the AMH show, I don't know, just all of them, like they all had these really intense feelings, and some of them felt really like home. And then some of them felt really like electric, like really just the energy in the room just felt so unbelievable to me. So yeah, sorry, I feel very emotional like thinking about it, but just having that experience.
No, don't apologize. That's what I want. I want to have 15 best nights of my life playing music and feeling those emotions and just being surrounded by people I love, and I've talked about it on the show, but after that show we played back in August, like my whole perspective on life kind of changed. I was like, these are my people. This is what I want to be doing. Like, this is it. This is it.
Dude, yes. Like that's, yeah, those nights, I mean, they can impact your whole life, right? Like, I don't know. I've been thinking this way since I'm a kid, and I don't know, like to me, it feels very real. Maybe it's just the way like my brain is like seeking some, connection and some higher experience and some feeling. It feels like religious or something. Like it's
Yeah.
But for me, it really, there's like a transcendence thing that happens, and there's
really
nothing that compares to that feeling of like sharing the energy with other people, and doing that through song, right? And just the what the songs meant for me and felt like for me, and my friends, and to be able to like feel that again, that's a feeling I didn't think I was ever going to have again, so yeah, I feel like kind of wild about it all. But to your point, I'm glad to hear that you felt like you had that night, like you had a night where you felt, like you truly found your people, you belonged, you felt at home, you felt seen, you felt accepted. Like this is, for me, this is why I do it. This is why I came to, find music, and I never left. I never will leave, It's like I feel at home. I feel like I'm myself, like my full self, So sorry. It's like
same here. That's
Yeah.
that I agree with everything you're saying. I got very emotional too during that, and I don't know exactly why, but but that's what I
Sorry.
keep saying. It's like I feel like I know who I am now after a long time of not knowing a lot, or just being upset all the time, or feeling separate all the time. But now I feel like, no, I just need to keep doing this as
Yes.
often as I can. This is it. This is it.
Yeah. Keith, I'm so like I was so happy to hear you say that, man. That's the fucking best. It's I don't know, I'm sure we could speculate a million reasons why you felt that, and
Yeah.
why I feel that. And also, it's so cool that so many different people, like, we go to the same place and we feel a similar thing, but we have our like extremely individual experience in that, like, so it's this collective experience and an individual experience at the same time, but it's so powerful. And truly, I love that you found that, and it's like this thing I want for everybody, like I want everybody to find their moment, or their band, or the song that like connects them to this higher part of themselves, or connects in with other people. It's truly like it's an experience I can't like explain other than fucking rambling, sounding like I sound like a high person, I think, I talking about it probably, but I don't care. It's really like a magical, transformative experience. So I think we're lucky to be here,
Big time. Big time. I feel the same way. So let's recap for the people and find out what's coming up, if anything. Now, Open City put out the excellent Hands in the Honey Jar last year. So what can we expect? More new music, more gigs? Give it to us.
Let's see. Open City, for Open City, we are, I will say, like, we're definitely limited and challenged by our other life stuff. So we're very much trying to book some shows together. And we've been very much trying to for a while. But honestly, I have faith that we'll be able to figure something out together, and pull it off, and maybe come to you with a couple of shows this winter. That's the hope, for sure. But nothing is in pen yet, so I can't announce it. And then
Isn't it funny that band started because Dan and Andy wanted like a local band that would practice every week, and then Andy ended up moving to Los Angeles?
Yes, the irony is not lost on me. Andy did move to Los Angeles, which really makes it hard to practice with him. And yeah, and
Were
everyone's
you like,
lives.
Damn it, we could have been doing this every week.
Yeah, well, we did at first, and that's like, part of the beauty of it is that was the intention of the band, and we certainly did it that way at first. And I think it's cool that everyone is so good to each other, that we will keep trying to make it happen. But yeah, Chris tours a lot with Ted Leo and the Pharmacists, and some other projects. So he's busy, Andy's busy, and Dan is busy. So and I'm busy. I also, in my other life since music stuff, I don't want to say has calmed down, but since I moved to Philly, I also focused a lot of time and energy on racing bikes. So that's also a thing I do at a amateur professional level, at a semi-professional level. The professional
cool.
level where you like can't quit your job, but you still race against other professional level people who can quit their jobs. So it's a tough spot.
That's like me with this podcast. I can't quit my job, but I am racing with other professionals in the world of podcasting.
Hell yeah, Keith. That's sick. I love that. Dude, honestly, I think your podcast is super pro. And I would love for you to be able to quit your job and live off of it because I'm a big fan. I listen to it all the time. I think it's really great.
Thank you. I love that you listen, and I would love to quit my job and just sit home and make content and push it out there. That's the dream.
Hell yeah, man. Let's fucking get you there. We need to get you a YouTube channel. I think that's what I heard. That's like how, you get the money. So
I have one, but I refuse to do video because I'm too introverted and I don't want to look bad and I don't want to do more work, which is going to hurt me, but we'll see. But listen, we're here to talk about you. So you're racing professionally. I love that.
Yes.
Or semi-professionally.
I didn't really talk about that before, but yeah, that's a really huge part of my life. So it's, it's to say that like it's part of sometimes a challenging music schedule because music and bike racing really occupy opposite ends of the schedule spectrum. So really late nights with music and then, really early mornings with bike racing, and training and racing is a very full-time endeavor. You sort of have to structure your life entirely to support doing things at a really high level like that. So it definitely it impacts what I'm able to do. But of course, again, music is my first love and it's my life. It's my like life force. So I will always find time for it and fit it in however I can. So
yeah, because like for professional racing, you probably have to do a lot of stuff to make sure you can do the racing, right? Because I got into physical fitness somewhat this year, and I have to go to bed at a certain time. I have to eat certain things, or I'm too much of a mess to do anything. Like, is it like that for you?
Hell yeah. Yeah, exactly. And again, at like, it's everything from an amateur to a professional level. It just becomes more and more specific, right? So yeah, there's a lot of going to bed, trying to go to bed early. For me, that's not easy. I've always been more of a night owl, but, you have to fit your training into your day. You got to eat a lot to support your training. I have a coach and I have like a training schedule. So that's usually another like anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week of training. So it is also like, it can be a lot of time. And yeah, weekends are when your events are. So, it's like you can't really play a show the same weekend you want to do a race that you care about. But you can certainly do a race that is like more casual and play a show. Like I've definitely done those two things. But and with that too, it's like there's always also the concern of getting injured, which is a very real concern. So it's an interesting balance. But I got really into it when I moved to Philly. So I've been into bikes my whole life. And I worked as a bike messenger when I lived in New York. And then I had enough of that after, almost like 10 years. It was a lot of cold, hard winters, and I wanted an indoor job. So I started working in bike shops. And that I really liked. Because, again, like I like working with my hands and learning things and fixing things. So, yeah, when I moved to Philly and I worked in shops, and Philly just has this amazing access to nature, much more so than New York did, and good riding. So I found a community here, and it's funny, there was a lot of crossover with punks and bikes. There was
huge crossover,
more than zero people, and I was kind of, even still to this day, I'm like really stoked to see how many, bike people have like punk stickers on their stuff, and vice versa. But yeah, it was a cool community that I connected with in Philly, and there's a really nice racing community here, and they embraced me, and so I got kind of into it. It definitely replaced a lot of my time and energy. It was around the time where Bridge and Tunnel was less active, so I had a lot more time, and kind of dove headfirst into that. So that's also been like a little over 10 years of like pursuing bike racing, first just at a casual, like just for fun level. And then, I got pretty good at it, and, just wanted to progress. I just wanted to see like how good I could get, and, I would say the funny thing there too is like, I think I treated bikes the same way I treat music. And it's like, if there's an opportunity, like I want to take it, and I want to see what I can do with it, see how far I can go, and see how good I can possibly get, or like how, much I can challenge myself to think outside like the box, or to do something different beyond what I've done before, or just really like perfect and hone my craft. It's like playing an instrument is the same way you like practice bikes for a race. Like, you really think about all these little elements, and then you focus on them, and you just try and like get better at them. You try and execute them better and smoother, and, save energy and like all this stuff. So yeah, that's also a fun pursuit for me, but it does take up a lot of time in my life. But it's, there's a lot of good that comes out of it. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. You get the physical fitness, and it's just another awesome pursuit. I approach things the same way you do. If I like them, I'm like, let's see how far we can take this.
Yeah. I can't, if I like something, it's like, I have a hard time not going 100% on it. But
Exactly.
yeah, because of course, like I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to experience life in new ways. So, yeah, getting to do that with bike racing has also been really cool. I've gotten to race bikes in Europe and throughout the country, and yeah, just see a bunch of cool places and connect with a really cool community within there as well. So it's cool. It's been fun.
How about the future of On the Might of Princes? Will there be more? What can we expect?
Yeah. So in the immediate future, we are looking to do some shows that will be announced. I want to say come like spring. I believe there's like a spring and summer plan. But I think with On the Might of Princes, we're very much like we want to keep the things we do with that band just to be kind of very special, and feel good for everybody, and really honor like the legacy that band has. So yeah, I think there'll be a couple of announcements for the spring summertime that I'm really excited about, playing with bands that I grew up loving, and yeah, have been really influential. So very excited for it.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to more. And Rachel, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show. It's been great getting to know you. It's been great performing with you, and hopefully we will run into each other again soon, which I'm sure we will. We have to.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Keith. I really appreciate you having me on and having this conversation. It's been really fun. And yeah, I hope I get to see you, and I hope I get to see your band play again soon, because your band was very awesome.
And there you have it. Rachel Rubino. What an excellent conversation. That was the conversation I needed to have, because the past few weeks have been not great. There's been a lot of downtime, more than I'm comfortable with. I haven't felt great, but this conversation with Rachel was just a much needed reminder of everything that's important to me, and really lifted me up. We had the same feelings about that show we played back in August, and we have the same feelings about this music, this scene, everything that we're doing. And it sounds like it makes her as happy as it makes me. And that was really what I needed to hear. And just look at everything Rachel has done over the years. I love hearing about how On the Might of Princes was so welcoming to her back in the day and took her first band on tour. I love that story about running into Dan Yeaman at Grindcore House in Philadelphia and how she ended up joining Open City, who are an incredible band. I love both of their records, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from them. And yeah, Rachel's just done a lot of great stuff over the years and is continuing to do awesome stuff. And she was a real pleasure to speak to. So thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on the show. And now we have our Artist Spotlight interview for the month of November. I'll be back next week, but make sure you stay tuned to hear from Mikey Kent, guitarist and vocalist of the band Private Hell. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Michael Kent. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Keith. I really appreciate you letting me come on.
Yes, it's great to have you here. What do you go by? Michael, Mike? Michael feels so formal.
My friends call me Mikey.
Mikey, it's great to have you here. Private Hell got on my radar recently because, you know, we've done many sponsorships with the wonderful Persistent Vision Records. So many great bands on that label, including yours, Private Hell, who just put out the Days of Wrath EP late last year, but we've got some new singles out now. And Mikey, we're going to get to that, but you live in Richmond, Virginia, correct?
Yep, we are a Richmond, Virginia band.
You moved there in 2015?
Yes, yeah.
From where?
I'm originally from North Carolina. I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, and then I lived in Charlotte for a couple years for college.
How did you like growing up there? How was it for you?
In North Carolina?
Yeah.
You know, North Carolina, you know, like anybody, I think when I was a teenager, I kind of had a complicated relationship with it. Growing up in Greensboro, anybody who's never been from there, and not many people probably have, it's the third biggest city in North Carolina, and it's historically had a pretty small music scene. So, you know, it's just very boring and suburban. It's interesting because in terms of population size, it's pretty comparable actually to Richmond, but with none of the sort of culture that a city like Richmond has. So I would say at times it could be very boring, especially when I was getting into music, but we did have a pretty decent music scene for some kind of crust bands and some kind of doom metal bands. When I was in high school, there's a great venue called Legitimate Business, where the house band was this band called Torch Runner, who they right before they kind of slowed down, they were on Southern Lord, and we would see bands like them and Brave Young, and they would bring bands like The Body and Thou. They were kind of in that kind of world of bands. And so that kind of stuff was really cool because there's a great DIY culture there. The thing with a city like Greensboro, and I'd say North Carolina in general is like this, is that the music scenes really require the work of 1 to 3 people to do all the booking, to play in all the bands, and to really carry the scenes on your back. So the second those people move, scenes will just dissipate instantly. And when I lived in Greensboro, it was a little bit more of a dry period. It got kind of cool a couple years later after I moved out because some cool people who now play in the band, like Public Acid, they moved there and kind of started a scene. But yeah, all that's to say is I now that I've been away from Greensboro and North Carolina in general for almost 10 years, I've really come to appreciate it and kind of keep it at a fun place in my heart. I think at the time it was just a little frustrating to be a teenager there.
Right. I think that's how it goes, because I've had this conversation recently. When you're living there, it's not the greatest, but then years later, you're like, okay, it wasn't so bad. I didn't like growing up in my town, but when I think back to it now, I'm like, we had everything. We had woods to play in when we were a kid. There was places to go. We had a very vibrant scene with a lot of great bands. It was fine.
Yeah. And Charlotte was even more bleak in terms of heavy music. There was when I lived there would be a couple cool bands, but there's nothing that made it a really strong scene when I lived there.
There's 2 North Carolina bands that come to mind right away for me when I was coming up. Hopes Fall and Code 7.
Sure. Yeah. Code 7. I think, are they from Winston-Salem? I want to say, which is right next to Greensboro. That's Greensboro, the already a relatively small city, the smaller city next to Greensboro. I definitely, Code 7 were one of those bands where they were the people in Just a Generation older than me. So like when I was like 16, the people who were like 23, 24, they like were passing down Code 7 CDs as like holy grails. Yeah, and you know, all the talk about Greensboro, there's been so many great bands from North Carolina in general, though. I mean, like a band like Catharsis is another like legendary band that like from the 90s that I think helped foster a scene there. There's bands like Prayer for Cleansing and stuff like that. Even going back to the 80s, there was, you know, Corrosion of Conformity, or Superchunk, or, you know, that kind of indie rock world. So I will say, I always try to give North Carolina credit for that, is that it does have great bands. It's just a lot of the times the scenes don't foster great music. It's like more of bands that are kind of like stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah. How old were you when you discovered this music down there in North Carolina? Around how old were you?
So I'm 32 now. So I kind of first started dipping my toes into just like listening to punk music when I was like 13, 14, which would be like 2005. So I was kind of coming of age, going to shows originally late 2000s, you know, like 2005 to 2011 when I moved out of Greensboro. So that's kind of the time I was getting into stuff. And a lot of the music that I was into when I first started getting into like punk and hardcore music was a lot of the wave of bands that were kind of emulating 80s hardcore. Because like 80s, like classic 80s hardcore is like in my DNA. That's like the stuff that got me into punk and hardcore music. You know, I went straight from like Green Day to listening to like Sex Pistols and then like Black Flag. And you know, all the deep well of 80s hardcore bands. So in the mid 2000s, there was a whole wave of new bands kind of doing that style. I think kind of as like a reaction to like the metalcore that was so popular just a few years prior. So when I started going to shows, it was bands, the big North Carolina bands, this band called Double Negative. And then Richmond, which was just right down the road, had bands like Government Warning and Direct Control, who were really spearheading that kind of scene. So that was really like the scene I came up in.
Your band Private Hell, when does it get started? How does it get started?
Private Hell started up in 2021. It was definitely like a band that like out of loneliness and boredom during COVID, me and my drummer Sam kind of came together. He had played in the band Fried Egg, who's like kind of like a cool like noise rock meets Poison Idea kind of band. And we both kind of came up in that kind of like 80s hardcore style of music, but we also always really loved heavier stuff that's a little more metallic without being like full on like too niche in the metal world. Like we just loved bands like Celtic Frost or Bolt Thrower, or like a lot of Japanese hardcore bands that incorporated like a metal influence. And what we really wanted to do with this band was just incorporate all of the influences of the music that we love so much and not like worry too much about, does it fit into this genre? I would say, I know you recently had Steve Von Till from Neurosis. That was another hugely influential band when we started this, of just not even necessarily what they sound like, but the way they approach blending influences into something unique. That was really our goal. So yeah, I'd say early 2021 is when we first started, and then we recorded our demo shortly after, and we were playing shows by that summer.
Nice. Yeah, I love the sound. I love the list of influences. I've heard you mention Integrity and Tragedy
Absolutely,
and Sepultura,
yeah.
and of course Neurosis. And I love the sound because it's got a traditional sound, but it's not, all right, if it's traditional 80s, like more Youth Crew sounding hardcore, you kind of lose me there, because that's not really my thing. But Private Hell is more, for a lack of better term, like on the crustier / noisier side. And I love that.
Yeah, if you asked our bassist what his, and he does some backup vocals for us too, if you asked him what his favorite band is, his favorite punk band, he would say His Hero Is Gone.
Yes.
And I love that stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, I love Youth Crew, and I love like really primitive, classic style 80s hardcore. But with this band, we were trying to do a band that not only did it mix influences, but it could play a lot of different types of shows. And if you're a straight up Youth Crew band, you're only going to be able to play in so many different types of environments.
Right.
So with this band, one of the things that's been really cool is that because we have elements of death metal, like we've gotten to play with bands like Incantation and Obituary, but then like because we're also into crusty stuff, we've gotten to play with like bands like Page 99. Not that they're a crust band, but they kind of come more from that kind of world to me a little bit. And we've gotten to play with like lots of D-beat bands. And yeah, like I said, yeah, like I love like your kind of what I would call like capital H hardcore music, and I love that stuff. But the most interesting bands from that world to me are bands that are kind of playing with the form. Even like a band like Integrity even does that a lot, I think.
Yeah, Integrity and yeah, it just depends on the band. Like Chain of Strength, I find interesting. Judge was doing some really interesting stuff, so I guess it just depends.
Yeah, it's when you get to like those like copy of a copy of a copy of a band kind of stuff is when it kind of loses me a lot of time. I think I feel the same way about a lot of like music that is only exists to replicate the music and aesthetic of Discharge. Like I love Discharge, and I love the first wave of bands influenced by Discharge. But when you're getting to bands that are just, it's so distilled that it just kind of loses the plot for me a little bit, with some exceptions. There are some great bands that do that style. But that's definitely how I feel about a lot of stuff. And what we didn't want to do with this band is do something where you can like hear it and you can be like, oh, this sounds like that band. Because that just kind of feels a little uninteresting to me.
You're absolutely right. Because, going back, Poison the Well comes out in 1999 and blows everybody away, right? Because that melodic metalcore sound was just starting up. It was like the genesis of that particular brand. But then fast forward 10 years later and we have Crabcore.
Yes,
so it's
absolutely.
Like, but by then it had lost me. But yeah, I'm with you. In those first few phases, there's some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could say that with a lot of genres of music too. I mean, like a lot of metalcore. That's a great example to me. Stuff like your early Cave In or your early Converge or Coalesce.
Oh yeah,
like, that stuff is so interesting. But yeah, once you get to those like third generations, it just kind of starts to lose the plot a little bit.
Exactly. If once it's technical just for the sake of being technical, I'm like,
I'm out at that point.
Yeah. So why did you move to Richmond?
So I moved to Richmond. I finished up college in 2015. Both my bands I was playing in had broken up. I was playing like kind of like an indie punk kind of Replacements influenced band called the Radio Reds for a couple years. We broke up, and then I was in a kind of like a folky punk band called the O'Reilly Factors. This is kind of more of just like a party band, not like kind of like serious music. But both those bands broke up. I finished college, and I was definitely in that just like post college, like what the hell do I do with my life kind of stuff. I just had a relationship end too, so I just had nothing tying me down, and it was basically looking at a map of like, all right, where I want to go somewhere, I need to hit reset on my life a little bit. And Richmond was on the list. Was also looking at like New York or even just like Raleigh or something, or even further away. And then a person who I had met on tour with one of my previous bands had a room open up, and like it sounds cliche, but I pretty much just like sold almost everything I own and moved to Richmond. Just fit all my stuff in one car and kind of hit the reset switch on my life.
I like that. Was it difficult to get set up there in Richmond, or did you know people already?
I knew one person who was my roommate, but we lived in a punk house, so it's like when you're living in a punk house where there's always people partying and stuff, you kind of pick up a social scene pretty quickly. And right when I moved to Richmond, I kind of you jump into the Richmond punk life, which is going to a million house shows, going to Strange Matter, which is like the legendary club that is no longer open. But it was like open since the 80s under different names and stuff. And so you kind of instantly pick up in a social scene there. And Richmond is such an incredible place for many reasons. But like I said earlier, it's got a small population, but it has the music scene size of a major city. Like we have in Richmond a music scene that is just as good, if not better, than I'd say anywhere else. It's pretty spectacular how small of a city Richmond is, with how per capita, how great the music scene is. There's VCU here, which is Virginia Commonwealth University, which is like it's a college, but it also has a big art school program, and I think that's kind of historically funneled people like arty people into the school. So yeah, I was instantly going to shows. I started a band after I lived in Richmond for like a month. I kind of went through a bunch of different bands and nothing really stuck. I got stuck in the rut of, you find some people, you release a demo, you do a couple shows, and then you'll lose a drummer or whatever. And that kind of floundered around for a while. I did a band for a couple years called Ghoulie that I just played guitar in. My wife sang in. It was kind of like kind of not horror punk, but I would say like kind of slightly spooky kind of punk, kind of like influenced by bands like TSOL or stuff like that. And we got to do some cool stuff. And then kind of COVID killed us. Like it did so many other bands where, COVID starts and, because nobody knew how long it was going to last for. I was like, guys, we got to keep practicing every week. We got to stay tight. We got to keep writing material. And that kind of just, I think, took the wind out of our sails when 8 months later, we were still quarantined. But so then that band kind of dissolved shortly, like, I guess like right around the same time as Private Hell starting up. But that band Ghoulie, we actually did get to play a kind of like a last show last year, which was cool with our friends at Page 99. They offered for us to play, and that was a pretty cool high note for that band to kind of turn the page on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And from talking to Mike from Page 99 and Tim Barry, and I know I've had other Richmond people on the show. Ryan Parrish, maybe?
Sure.
He lives down there? Yeah.
Yeah, oh, legend. Great guy, too.
Yeah. Dude, the scene down there must be just amazing. Like, dating back to the 90s all the way till now, it just seems like it's great.
Yeah. Even going back to the 80s, you had bands like the early versions of Guar with the band Death Picky. You had this band called White Cross. You had all sorts of cool bands. Graven Image or Honor Roll. But yeah, then the 90s, then you can't talk about Richmond punk and hardcore without talking about Avail. They're just so important. And their footprint is just massive in the way they inspire people. It's actually been pretty cool with this band getting to know some of the people in Avail, specifically their drummer, Eric, is a big supporter of our band, which has always been really cool because I admire what that band did and still does so much.
Yeah, and which the full scope of which I didn't even realize until I did this show, but then just so many people have been helped by Avail and Tim, and they just seem like they've always been there for other bands, and I love that.
They're lifers, and there's a lot of that in Richmond of people who maybe they're not dedicating, maybe they're not going out to every single show because, they're 45 years old, but they're still like supporting the scene and going to see bands and like wearing band shirts and stuff. And there's a lot of that in Richmond where it's like in most cities, me at age 32, I would feel like the oldest person at a house show, but that's not the case in Richmond. You have people who have been taking photos at punk shows for 30 years right next to people who are going to their first show at age 17.
Yeah.
It's pretty special.
Yeah, I'm 42 now, so I don't go to every show, but I'm still supporting as much as I can.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing as you get older in punk. At 32 right now, I sometimes feel like a dinosaur, which is funny because 32 isn't relatively that old.
It's not.
But it's like you find ways that like DIY and punk culture and counterculture in general find ways in which it matters to you as an adult. Because some of the times those reasons can be different than they might have been when you were 17.
Right. So how did you hook up with Persistent Vision Records? Now, they got on my radar because they've sponsored this podcast more than once, and there's so many awesome bands on that label, including yours. How did you hook up with them?
Yeah, so we put out our first tape. It was like semi-self-released. It was kind of co-released with this little label called Bat Magic, which is like the bassist from Integrity and the guitarist of Devil Master. He put that out, but we recorded a second tape called Days of Wrath that we released with Persistent Vision. We met them through Page 99, really. I actually became friends with Mike from Page 99 outside of punk and hardcore, really. I used to do like a horror movie podcast, and I had him on the show. We became friends through that, and then we kind of also became friends through fostering dogs. Me and my wife worked a lot with like an animal rescue. So through him, I kind of met met Paul because he was doing those Page 99 reissues, and through that, at that point, I think they had done like the Page 99 reissues. They might have done the Habak record, maybe the Masonera record, and we were kind of the first local band that they worked with. And I think initially we were trying to do like a 12-inch EP, and it ended up working out better for us and for them to do it as another cassette tape. And I really admire that label a lot for the sheer like how eclectic the label is. There really isn't a uniform sound. I feel like it would be easy to look at it and be like, oh, it's like a screamo label, but there's so much different stuff on there. It's incredible. And I think that's really true with the spirit of how I feel about heavy music. You know, you got bands like Prisoner doing like really great, like industrial, crusty death metal. But then you also have like our friends, another local band, Vigil, doing thrash metal. And then you have Page 99 and all this kind of bands. So yeah, I had hit up Paul from Persistent Vision, and they were really interested. And I've kind of worked with them a little bit on promotion for stuff, and also for like, he's kind of asked me about a lot of like booking and stuff, because I do a lot of like active booking in Richmond for punk and hardcore shows, and they had us on their festival Dark Days Bright Nights. I was gonna say it wrong. Dark Days Bright Nights. They had us on their festival, and yeah, it's a really cool little label.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. It's a very finely curated group of bands.
I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's not like all one thing. It all fits under an umbrella similar to like Nero Recordings or like another label like that, but it's just like everything I've heard from them just looks and sounds awesome.
Yeah, and I think that even carried over to their festival, the Dark Days Bright Nights, is where like it feels very curated and very specific, and has like an aesthetic and an intention to it in mind, rather than just like releasing whatever.
Right. So we put out Days of Wrath, the EP, which is out there now. And I saw that we have some new singles out: Wake Up Screaming, Dead Inside, and Warsaw. And I love these singles. The riffs are even heavier now, which I always love. So what is that leading up to? Is this another release? Can we talk about it yet?
Oh, yes. So we did that Days of Wrath with Persistent Vision, but we wanted to keep releasing music. And it's a conversation we've had a lot in the band of the way we want to be as a band in terms of releasing music. And we really like bands that are very prolific and like constantly release music. One of, my favorite bands of all time is the band Fucked Up. Our drummer is a huge Melvins guy, bands that are just really persistent with releasing music consistently. So we wanted to do it in a perfect world. We would want to be releasing a bunch of like 2-song singles, like the old 45s, which is an A-side and a B-side. That's really kind of what we had in mind, of just having these like standalone singles that are kind of independent of larger releases. So that this Wake Up Screaming flexi disc we did is the first of that, and we're going to do another one, maybe 2 more before the end of 2025. The plan is to have 2 more 7-inches out. And we self-released it. I think I totally don't blame them for this. Persistent Vision was a little hesitant to do flexi discs just because they're not the easiest to move. and I get it. But alternatively, 7 inches take forever. It's like kind of like traditional vinyl. The releases take so long. It could take, a year just to get your hands on a 7-inch.
It takes forever, and the label typically loses money on them. So
exactly. But as a fan of like, especially like 80s hardcore and 90s hardcore, I love 7 inches. I love the short form format for punk music. And I think even nowadays in the modern music climate, you see so much stuff, like a lot of like hip hop stuff, or even punk stuff or metal stuff. They'll just like release 2 songs and just kind of throw them out there. And I really like that. We really want to do an LP, but we're kind of just like inching our way towards that. And we're kind of hoping with these flexi disc singles that we can kind of garner some interest and find people who appreciate our band. And I think by, like just throwing out 2 to 3 songs, every couple months, that kind of keeps people engaged more in a way. Whereas people will listen to an album and then they'll forget about it in a month, and then won't think about you again until you release something new.
Exactly. And I like the singles. Well, I like albums too, but
I love albums.
I like
like
albums are, but in 2024, I like singles a lot too, because sometimes I'll be like, oh no, I have to listen to this whole album. Let's see how long the songs are. Oh no, they're 5 and 6 minutes. Oh no, I better block off some time. But if it's just like 3 new singles out there and they're 3 minutes, I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Oh, yeah, it's like 6 minutes. I think our new thing is like 6 minutes of material.
Yeah. I'm susceptible to the TikTok generation too, I guess.
Yeah. That's definitely an element of it too, of just like these like short song bites and stuff. But yeah, and you mentioned how it's heavier. That's really been something that we wanted to do with these new songs. Is I think on Days of Wrath, I really like that EP, but I was never super satisfied with the way it came out, because I think we just really banged it out in a weekend. And we were actually pretty adventurous on some of those songs. Like there's like a 4.5 minute like thrash metal epic on it. But with these new songs, we actually became a 3-piece right before we recorded. So we're all right. We got to kind of like sand down the edges a little bit and like be as like primitive and as heavy and effective as possible, rather than trying to get too ambitious. I mean, and I think about a lot of great bands. Richmond's got a ton of great bands where it's just like a band, like the band Killing Pace is a really incredible band, where it's just like, I want to like take these songs and just like shove them down your throat. And that's really what I was trying to do with these. And I was trying to like using different guitar tones. I really kind of got influenced thinking about a lot of Swedish death metal bands like Entombed or Dismember. Became very influential on the kind of riffs I was trying to write. And just trying to write things that are really straightforward and kind of get in, get out kind of stuff, rather than doing like bigger form stuff. And I think that especially suits itself to the single format of just like a 2-minute song rather than like a 4-minute song.
Yeah, that my band is a 3-piece too, and that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be like as heavy as possible and not too complicated, and I just want like, I want it to sound full. I want it to sound like an assault. So I kept that in mind with the guitar tones and the overall sound and everything. And with this band, I don't typically write songs longer than 3 minutes. I have in the past, but it's just not the way it happens these days.
Yeah, I think even like some of the songs on this new release, I was like, oh, okay, well then we'll have another verse and then another outro. And then I was like, nope, let's just like get in, get out. Like, let's just have the coolest parts like stacked on top of each other and hopefully flowing in a fairly straightforward manner. I will say we put a lot more work into the vocal production. Not that it's heavily produced, but our previous 2 tapes we had recorded in Norfolk, which is like 2 hours from Richmond. So it was a thing of like, okay, you have to record 6 songs in a weekend. And when you're singing in an aggressive band, it's pretty easy to lose your voice pretty fast. So whereas this we recorded locally and we got to like really like bang out takes for the songs, as well as using kind of microphones that were a bit noisier feeling, just like a little more intention with the songs. And it helps that it was only 3 songs, so we could like really zero in on the sessions.
So tell us what's coming up. When can we see you? Where can we see you? What is the future for Private Hell?
I think we're playing... might be doing a North Carolina and a Virginia Beach show in early December. We are gonna kind of I won't say lay low, but we're gonna just kind of stay local for the first 2 months probably of January or of 2025, just so we can finish writing these new songs. Because our intention is to record 2 7-inches worth of songs in the same sessions. So that we already have them. So our plan is to have another single out by April-ish, maybe May, I would say. And then we definitely want to do some touring in 2025. I'm a parent as of a year ago. So it does make it so we kind of do like 5-day little bursts. We can't do any like really extensive touring, but we have in the past gotten to do touring through like Canada and stuff. We would love to go back there. We were looking at maybe the Pacific Northwest. So we'll definitely be playing around and hopefully have out multiple releases in 2025, and definitely gonna play regionally. I think one of the great things about Richmond, among the many other things I love about it, is just its proximity on the East Coast, because it's so close to everything. It's really easy to do weekends. So you can do drive an hour and a half to Washington, D.C., and then an hour to Baltimore. Just do 2 shows, 2 days. Or you could and go back home. Or you could do Philadelphia or New York. All those places are within, 6 hours. New York, maybe at like 7. So we'll definitely be doing a lot of those throughout the year. And then we'll definitely at some point do probably like a week-long tour or something. So we definitely have a lot on the horizon, but we're just kind of keeping our heads down for the first month or 2 of 2025.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you at some point. I love the music. Everybody make sure you check out everything Private Hell has done. Days of Wrath, the EP is out on Persistent Vision Records, but the new singles, Mike, I would say there's a clear trajectory up. I went and listened to the whole discography. It just gets better and better, the overall sound, and I love it.
Yeah, I know I'm biased, but I really think so too, where I listen now to like our earlier releases and I'm like, it just doesn't even compare. I think we've like really figured out what our sound is right now. And I'm really excited about that. I appreciate you saying that too. Where are you based out of?
I am in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, okay. We'll definitely come to New York at some point. We played a TVI once a year and a half ago. Yeah. And we will definitely be back at some point. I'll drop you a line when we do.